The centerpiece was hers, not in the way people say things are theirs at Christmas, not purchased last minute from a gas station or contributed as an afterthought. Elena had driven 40 minutes in November sleet to find the right pine branches, the kind that still held their needles, and she had wired them together on a Tuesday night after Mara was asleep, hot glue burning the side of her thumb while a documentary played unwatched on the laptop beside her. No one knew that. No one had asked. She had also made the glaze for the ham, the rolls from scratch, the cranberry sauce that her sister Diane had accepted compliments for 3 years running without correction. She had wrapped the gifts for Diane's boys, because Diane had texted in October saying she was overwhelmed, and driven them over in a reused bag, and said nothing when her mother mentioned, over the phone a week later, how thoughtful Diane always was with presents. Elena had learned over many years that invisibility was not an accident in this family. It was a structure, and she had agreed to live inside it for longer than she could now reasonably explain. Mara was wearing the red dress. That was the thing Elena kept returning to. Later, the red dress with the white collar, the one Mara had chosen herself from the rack and called the Christmas one, the one she'd hung on her door so it would be ready. 8 years old, and she had laid out her shoes the night before. She had been so certain this dinner was going to be good. She was eating quietly, the way children eat when they are trying to be acceptable, cutting her food into careful pieces. When Diane refilled her wineglass and said it wasn't a shout. It didn't need to be, honestly, Elena. I don't know why you even come. You make everything uncomfortable just by being here. You should leave, both of you. Just go. A breath of silence, then their mother, not looking up from her plate. Christmas really is so much better when it's relaxed. Mara's fork stopped moving. Elena looked at her daughter's face, that specific stillness children get when they are trying to understand whether what just happened was real, and felt something she had no clean word for. Not rage. Rage had heat. This was colder, more structural. Like watching a wall you'd spent years leaning against finally show you it was never load-bearing. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. She said quietly, "Then you won't mind me doing this." She picked up her napkin, set it beside her plate, looked at Mara. "Come help me get something from the kitchen." In the kitchen, she crouched down to Mara's level and said, "I need to make one call. It'll take 2 minutes. Then we're going to decide together what we want to do tonight, okay? We might go home. We might go get hot chocolate. But whatever we do, it's going to be our choice." Mara nodded. Her eyes were careful. Elena stood up. She called the property management company, the one that handled the rental on Clifton Street, the property her mother had put in Elena's name 7 years ago for tax purposes and then forgotten about the way people forget about infrastructure. The account, the correspondence, the legal authority, all Elena's, always had been. She had one instruction. Simple. Redirect the February reservation deposit. The family reunion booking her sister had been planning since August, back to the primary account, Elena's account. Pending her authorization to release, it took 90 seconds. She put her phone in her pocket, filled a glass of water, walked back to the dining room and sat down. She was finishing her water when her brother-in-law Marcus looked at his phone. She watched his expression change, not dramatically, the way faces change in films, but the small, real way. A slight tension around the eyes, a jaw that stops mid-chew. He showed the screen to Diane without speaking. Diane read it. Her mother, noticing the shift, leaned over. The notification was from the management company, routine language. Flag transfer pending authorization. Account holder, Elena Voss. Diane looked up. "What did you do?" Elena set down her glass. "I corrected something. The deposit, the whole reunion, we already told everyone. I know. Elena." Her mother's voice had changed register entirely. The casualness gone, something more careful replacing it. "We can talk about this." "We can," Elena said. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to explain the rental history, or the years of account management, or the reason her name was the one on the paperwork. She didn't perform. She sat with the same posture she'd had all evening, and she waited, and the waiting was its own kind of sentence. Marcus started to say something about February flights already booked. Diane said her name twice more, in 2 different tones. Her mother used the voice she reserved for situations she needed to reframe. "I think there's been a misunderstanding tonight," as though the dinners had simply taken a wrong turn somewhere, as though words said to a child in a red dress were a matter of poor communication. Elena listened to all of it. Then she stood and she helped Mara with her coat. They drove home through streets that were quiet in a specific way. Streets are on Christmas night. Lit up and emptied out. Everyone already inside their version of the holiday. Mara was in the back seat. She'd asked for hot chocolate, and Elena had stopped at the gas station that was open, the one with the machine that made it too sweet, and Mara had held it with both hands and said it was perfect. She was asleep before they reached the highway. The cup still loosely in her grip, Elena drove. She didn't feel like someone who had won something. She felt like someone who had finally stopped donating blood to people who had never once asked how she was doing. It wasn't satisfaction exactly. It was the particular quiet of a decision that couldn't be unmade, not because she'd done damage, but because she'd stopped. The February deposit would stay pending until she released it. She hadn't decided yet whether she would. That felt important, not the decision itself, but the fact that it was hers to make. That it had always been hers to make, and she had simply not remembered that until tonight. The pine branches were still at her mother's house. On the table she had set, she drove on. The streetlights passed overhead, one after another, steady and indifferent and bright.